Hi everyone, welcome back. In this video we are going to connect our character model to our skeleton using a system called BindSkin. We're then going to make sure that it's all functional using a tool called Paint Weights or Paint Skin Weights, and that allows us to edit the connection between the character model and the rig skeleton. Before we can start connecting things up, there's a couple of little things that we need to do. We're going to do a little bit of housekeeping on the file that we've got open. And we also need to make a small modification to the character's arms. So let's make that modification to the character's arms first. I'm going to move in and I'm going to zoom in here. And I'm going to select the arm model just here. I'm going to isolate the visibility here by clicking on this isolate select button. Basically what that does is it hides everything except what I've got selected. So now I can just see the two arms by themselves. Okay, so basically what I need to do is I need to add a division or a cut through the forearm just here. And that's because we added a new joint just here to help kind of control the twisting of the arm. So there's an extra joint in the skeleton, just to show you where that is. That's just there. And in order for the this joint to function properly on the model, I need to add in another division in the model. So when this rotates, the new division that we put in here will also rotate. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to use the insert edge loop tool. That's going to be the easiest tool for this. So what I'm going to do is come up to my menu set just here. I'm going to select modeling, and then I'm going to come across to mesh tools. And just here we've got insert edge loop. Okay, just there. Now one of the things that we could do, technically speaking, is we could set up symmetry in our selection tool, and what that should do is enable us to do one edge loop here and it will mirror it to the other side. That, technically speaking, that should work, but we'll just do this manually because it's pretty quick and easy. So what I want to do is come to Mesh Tools, Insert Edge Loop Tool, Option Box, and I want to set my maintain position to multiple edge loops and then set the number of edge loops to 1. And what this is going to do is anywhere I click along this line, it's going to place the new edge right down the middle in between this set of edges and this set of edges. Okay, so basically it's a foolproof way of getting this line right in the middle. So with those settings, all I do is click on one of the forearm edges just through here, and it will place the new edge just there in the middle. Once again, that's halfway between this set of edges and this set of edges down here near the wrist. All I need to do now is go across to the other arm and just click exactly the same way. So just click somewhere on the forearm along one of the edges and it will add an edge loop in like that. And that's it. That's basically all we need to do. So now what I'm going to do is switch the tool off. I'm going to click to deselect the edge that I've just added like this. And then I'm going to right click and hold on the object and select object mode. And then I'm going to unhide or de-isolate my selection. So I'm going to click back on the isolate select just there. That brings the visibility of everything back. And now what I want to do is delete the history on the arms. Notice I've still got the arms selected, by the way. So we'll go edit, delete by type, history, and that's going to remove the input from that insert edge loop that we've just done. So that way over here in our arms channel box we don't have any inputs. We would have had like an insert edge loop or something like that over here. Okay, so that's the model ready to go. Now you'll notice obviously that the edge isn't sort of right where the joint is. That's not going to really matter too much. The binding is based on the proximity of the joint to a vertex in the object. Okay, so let's have a quick look. I'm going to hit save. Now what I want to do is a little bit of housekeeping. Okay, we've got this extra skeleton just here. and mine's hidden in this layer, this display layer. So if I click this visibility button on, you'll see that the skeleton pops up in the background. Some of you might not have this layer, and so that skeleton's been there the whole time. We don't need this anymore as a reference, so from now on I'm going to have this deleted. So I'm going to select the root sample over here, this joint, and hit delete to delete the skeleton. And then I can delete this display layer as well by right-clicking it and hitting delete layer. That gets rid of that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to save the file out. So I'm going to go File, Save Scene As, and I'm going to call this one Skin Bind. Okay, new version number and Skin Bind. I already had a test version, so I'm just going to override that. Okay, so what we're going to do is connect the model onto the skeleton. Depending on how your model is set up, and I'm talking here generally about character models, not this specific one. Sometimes you'll get a character model where it's made out of different parts, but they're all combined together. So when you select one of them, it selects the whole thing. Sometimes you'll get a character like this where it's made out of separate parts that are still separate. So for instance, I've got the legs is one piece, the body's another piece, and then the arm is another piece. The arms and the legs are combined, so when I select one leg, it selects both. Okay, so sometimes you've got a character that's set up like that. There are different options with the skin binding which kind of prefer or favor one or other of those kinds of setups. And so you use the one that's appropriate to whatever your model structure is. And it just gives you a better accuracy with the initial binding. So that way when you move, say, the arms, they move or they bend in a nicer way than they would have using the other setting. But you'll see this happen in a minute. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to select the root joint of our skeleton. Just there, the root joint. Then what I'm going to do is hold Shift, and I'm going to select the other parts of the character. So I'm going to select the model, legs. I'm going to select the model's arms, and also the model's body, the can. Make sure you don't have anything else selected. Okay, so just make sure you don't have any of the handles selected or anything like that. Make sure you don't have the IK selected as well. Some people will often click the IK instead of the model. So just make sure that it's just those things there. So you can see the root joint, the arm mesh, the leg mesh, and the can mesh. Then what we're going to do is come up and change our menus again. So I'm going to go back up to the menu status, and I'm going to select rigging, and we're going to be going into the skin menu. Now the option we're looking for is the first one, bind skin. You'll also notice on the rigging tab it's just here. Bind skin is this little icon here. It's the same icon as you'll see in the menu. I'm going to come across to the options for this. So there's a lot of settings in here. Most of them we pretty much can leave as they are. I'm just going to reset the settings here, and you can see that we've got a few things that we're going to change. So generally speaking, what we're going to be doing with this first thing is we want to bind to the joint hierarchy that we've got selected. So if this is set to joint hierarchy, it's going to bind the model to all the joints that are highlighted. Okay, because we selected the top of the hierarchy, which is the root joint, everything else, all the other joints are connected through each other to this. That's a joint hierarchy. If I hit selected joints, it would only bind to the joints I clicked on. So in other words, it would have only bound itself to the root joint. So I'm just going to go joint hierarchy. The bind method, that's one that we do need to change. What I want to do is use geodesic voxel for this. What this is going to do is it's going to handle having separate parts of the model a little bit better than it would with the other options. So this geodesic voxel is sort of designed to pick up separate objects within the model and bind them a little bit more accurately. The skinning method quite often we will use dual quaternion. What this will do is it'll try and prevent things like the knees and the elbows from collapsing when they're bent. So it kind of keeps the shape of the thickness of the arm a little bit more intact sometimes. So dual quaternion can be an option that you can try out. We definitely want to leave normalized weights set to interactive. The weight distribution, sometimes what I will do is actually set them to neighbors. And the reason for that is, what this is talking about is the weight distribution is the connection between a vertex in the object and the joints that it attaches to. So what this is doing essentially is saying, should I attach the weighting, should I share the weighting from one vertex in the model, which is attached to one joint, to other joints based on whether or not they are connected to that first joint? So for example, if we're talking about this one here, it would attach it to either this one or this one, as well as this, because these ones here are neighbors of this one, they're connected to this one. Or should it do it through distance? And that's basically where you might have another joint, like say, this vertex here might need to be connected, or would need to be connected to this joint here and this joint here, because these are the ones that control the body vertices. But if this collarbone is actually closer to that vertex, when you're using distance, it will actually add some control of that vertex to the collar, even though technically the collar shouldn't move it. So I tend to use neighbors quite a bit to try and control which vertex in the model gets connected to which joint. Maximum influences, I usually drop that down to 3. And the reasoning behind that is, so the maximum number of influences for one vertex in the model is essentially 3 joints in this case. So this vertex here might mainly be controlled by this joint because it's closest, but it might also slightly be controlled here and up here as well by these other 2 joints. So that when this joint bends, the vertex kind of will move slightly with this one and this one as well, just to smooth it out. Otherwise, when the can bends, it might end up looking more like a zigzag instead of a nice curve. So what we try and do is blend weights between different joints. So having maximum of 3 influences, it just stops, say, this vertex up here being controlled by a joint down here, for instance. It makes it a bit easier to control. Normally what I'll also do, I tend to leave colorized skeleton on, for example. The rest of this you can kind of leave as it is. The only other thing that you might want to do is increase the resolution, and this is connected to the geodesic voxel option here. So this is only active when you've got this on, and this is basically the accuracy setting of the bind method. The bind method is what it uses to actually do the attachment, or where it calculates which vertex to attach to which joint. And the voxel method here is based on a resolution. So what I might do is just increase that to 512. You can go higher if you want. The higher number you place this on, the more accurate the connection becomes, but the longer it takes to calculate. But it's not going to be like, like a really long calculation, like half an hour or something like that. So I'm just going to use those settings, and then I'm going to hit bind skin. And you can see down the bottom, it's calculating the voxelization. So what it's doing is calculating the object into voxels, which are like volumetric pixels. So kind of imagine the model being made out of like a point cloud, for instance. And then what it does is it calculates the distances to all of the points from the joints, and then connects them. Okay, so we've got our character bound. At this point, what we can do is start to test the deformation, or the way that the character bends, just to make sure that things have linked together properly. So if I come over and I select my foot controller just here, I'm going to switch the viewport to smooth shade just here. I'm going to click this on. That way I can see the model. If I select this foot, and I use the move tool, and I move the foot up and down, okay, you can see that we get this really weird bending, okay, this weird deformation. There's all sorts of, I'm getting a weird bump here. Obviously half the can is freaking out as well. This is what we need to fix, and this is where we use the paint skin weights to fix this up. But you can kind of see how this is sort of freaking out. It's doing all sorts of weird things like this. This is part of the reason why quite often what I'll try and do is bind the skeleton separately onto the legs and separately onto the body and then the arms. But yeah, you can kind of see how that's functioning, and we've got a similar thing going on here. So what we need to do is use the skin weights tool, and we need to go through and edit all of the skin weights so that they're only being controlled by the joints that we want them to be controlled by. Okay, so I'm going to save this, and I'm going to end this video here. In the next video, we will start painting the skin weights. So I'll see you then.